Hi guys, welcome back. So we are in season 2. This is episode 1 of season 2. Just a quick recap. So last season, I asked God to be my mentor, right? And I asked him to teach me about his word, and I asked him to show me the truth of his word and also uncover the lies of what the enemy has tried to make his word about, right? And it all kind of started when I asked the Lord, when is the Sabbath day, right? And his response, while it was so simple, it was so profound, and it has turned into something just amazing, right? His simple response was, go back to the beginning. And I was like, okay. And so we went through, or started going through, the book of Genesis, right? And not only did he tell me about the Sabbath day, but he has told me about so many other things, to where it has actually turned into a whole podcast, because God could not be contained, which of course he can't. He's amazing, right? So we left off last season, and I got my notes up here just to make sure I don't miss anything, right? So if you see me looking at my computer, it's because I'm making sure I'm not missing nothing on my notes. But we left off last season talking about like lingering spirits, and after the flood, like what happened with those lingering spirits, and how they had already they hadn't even been off the boat for that long, right? And those lingering spirits had already started to show up and started to take residence in the people. So as we get into season 2, episode 1, not only has the Lord just expanded my capability of understanding and revelation, but he's also added some things in as additional background information through the book of Jasher. And so I'm really excited to go through season 2, because when I tell you God is amazing, and how he moves and how he does things and how he just brings things to the forefront, like the devil be really trying it. But Yah is Yah. And so I'm excited about this one. So in season 2, right, we're going to start out after the flood, right? I told you about the lingering spirits. They were growing. It got so bad, y'all, to where they had already, as the people, started to grow, like after Noah's kids had kids, and all of that kind of stuff, they started to repopulate. It had already gotten so bad that people were starting to serve other gods already, right? Because after Noah and his sons and all of that, after they started to repopulate, they start, doing all kind of crazy stuff all over again. The same reasons that why the Lord flooded the earth, but that's neither here nor there, right? So we see that all the way up until Abram, which we know becomes Abraham, right? He was like the first one to actually have some sense about himself after Noah to, actually worship the Lord, because they had started making, idols of like wood and stone and all kind of stuff, and trying to serve all of these idols. Even Abraham's daddy, like, which is crazy in itself, like how your daddy was serving other gods, but the Lord put it in Abram to be like, nah, that's not me. He gave him discernment real quick, right? So as we go through, Genesis, and we connect it with Jasher, and I think it's Jasher chapter 11, but we're going to dig deeper into that part a little bit later. During this time of Abram, the world is now being ruled by Nimrod, right? So we done traveled a couple of generations, right, to the point to where now we're at the point where Abram is alive, Nimrod is in control, right? And under Nimrod, they were corrupt. When I say corrupt, they was doing the most, right? They was worshiping other gods, false deities, sacrificing to other gods. Like, they was doing the most. It's almost like they forgot that the flood even happened and why it happened, but they didn't really forget, but they was acting like they did. It was crazy. And they was all together in on it, except for Abram, Sarai, who we know will become Sarah, right? Only him and, his immediate little group of individuals in his sphere, they were the ones who were righteous during that time, right? But everybody else, when I say they was corrupt, they was so corrupt that they was speaking the same language, right? They was all of one mindset. They was all doing the same thing, thinking the same way, almost like a cult, which is crazy because it's like, Lord, is this when cults started? Because that's the vibe, right? Like, they was all thinking one thing, like they all drank the Kool-Aid or something. It was crazy. Now, with Genesis being the overview, because we talked about this last season, right? Genesis is like the overview of what happened in the beginning, but Jasher is like the detailed, what's actually happening, like this actually happened, that actually happened, right? So when you read it in Genesis initially, something in my eye. We're at the point where Nimrod and his people have decided they're going to build the Tower of Babel, right? But it wasn't called that. They had just kind of made within themselves that they were going to build a tower, right? Now, in Genesis, it doesn't really go into detail about this tower and what was happening in the background. It just kind of gives like a general overview, right? And it literally, in Genesis, it just says like, oh, we're going to build a city, and then we're going to build a tower. And I kind of get that. I understand it's a lot of people, right? They have started repopulating. It's a lot of people, right? So building a city to kind of contain themselves and everyone having their own space and all that I get. But the tower part was what kind of threw me, because they were like, oh, we're going to build a tower to protect ourselves. And I'm thinking to myself, who are you protecting yourself from? Lord, what is happening right here? Because if all of y'all are of the same mindset and all of y'all are doing the same things, sinning the same way, like y'all all together. So make this make sense to me, Father, because who are they indeed trying to protect themselves from? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And as you continue to read it, it doesn't really go into detail about this stuff in Genesis. Like I said, Genesis is just like the overview. So this is just, me and the Lord having a conversation at this point, because I'm like, what's happening? Why are they trying to protect themselves? Who are they protecting themselves from if they all together? They all speak the same language. They all have the same mindset. Who are they protecting themselves from? Because that's what towers are usually for, right? If you think about it, like in the old times, right? people would build towers so they could see, they enemies coming from afar off, and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, Lord, what's going on here? And this is where we venture into the book of Jasher, right? And it becomes really clear that the spirit of pride, when I tell you that spirit of pride was lingering, it was doing its big one. Because when I get into the book of Jasher, it talks about like how they say, they're going to give themselves new names. They're going to make like a new name for themselves, like a new people, right? And it's like, why are they doing that? If everybody already has their individual names, why do they need a new name? Like, who are they trying to differentiate themselves from? Stick with me, because it gets so deep, y'all. Of course, Abram at the time, he wasn't with the shenanigans. He wasn't a part of none of that. So it was like, okay, put it all into perspective. Nimrod is in charge. They're serving other gods. They're worshiping other gods. Like, they're doing a whole bunch, right? And I was like, Father, Lord, yeah, who are they trying to separate themselves from? Who are they trying to protect themselves from? Like, what's really going on here? Only for the Holy Spirit to be like, they're trying to separate themselves from God. They're trying to give themselves a new identity, a new, they're trying to basically separate themselves from the Lord. And it's like, why would you do that? And in Jasher, it talks about how they started to, the verbiage that they started to use was, let us make a new name for ourselves. And the only other time I've ever heard let us do anything so far, in this Genesis journey, is when the Lord was like, let us make man in our image and in our likeness, right? And immediately God showed me like this was the devil's way of attempting to mimic what the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit had done in the beginning, right? Because if they were already separated, if they already had names, and why did they just all of a sudden feel like we got to have a new name? We have to be a new way. You know what I mean? So the enemy at this point has taken over in them, and it's taken over to a point to where they have decided they want to create something new about themselves. New names, new identity, no longer going to be what God called me to be. And it automatically made me think about the trans community, right? Like, you are trying to change who you are because you're no longer in agreement or serving the Lord in the way that it was meant for you to. And so your mind you have been warped into this cultish mind, right? In the same way that the people of Nimrod were, right? So my questions just kept going at this point, because I was like, okay, I understand their mindset now. I get what was happening with that. But why, like, what was the point of the tower? Why were you trying to build the tower? Who were you trying to impress? I mean, what was the point, right? And God showed me in Jasher, it talks about how the mindset and the heart posture was, we're going to ascend into heaven, right? And it just brings me back to the mentality that we saw of Satan and how he said he was going to ascend above the throne of the Lord. Like, that same spirit is now in them, and they are operating out of that spirit. It also brings me back to, I think it's Isaiah chapter 14. Let me make sure. Verse 12 through 14, right? Where the enemy, the devil, is saying like he's going to ascend above the heavens and he's going to, do all of this like he's God, right? So that mindset is now in the people. And those lingering spirits from the enemy have now entered into this massive group of people, because I want to say it was like 600,000 of them at this point. Like, it was a lot of them, and they was all of the same mindset and all of the same spirit. And so they were all thinking, we are going to ascend above the heavens. And it's like, wow, this is about to get bad, because we already know what happened to Satan. You know what I mean? So it's about to get crazy. And it also kind of showed me like that statement about bad company corrupts good morals. That's so true, because they were all in that mindset because they were all together. They were all in communion with each other, and it made me realize, like, you can't hang out with everybody. You can't stay in a certain area with everybody all the time if that's their mindset, because eventually that's going to become your mindset too. And I've experienced that firsthand. I've experienced going off the path of righteousness because I was in a place where sin was active and abounding. And instead of fleeing from it, like the Bible tells us to, I thought, oh, I can be around it. It's cool. I'm straight. Only to realize I ended up falling too, because it was active sin in that atmosphere, right? And the minds were like-minded. So it kind of hit home for me a little bit as I was reading this, and it really showed me, like, you can't do everything. You can't hang out with everybody, because spirits linger. Like, we see that already, like, spirits linger. So anywho, I'm getting back to, like, why would they trying to build a tower in the first place, right? And this is them in this false sense of self-worth and this inflated sense of ego in saying we're gonna, ascend to heaven and all of that. But my question was, what did they think they was gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, let's say you built the tower, right? And you ascended up into the heavens. What were you going to do? And what made them think that the Lord wasn't going to send a legion of angels to come and wreak havoc on them if they did manage to get up there? Like, the minds, when I say these people's minds was gone, their minds was gone, because this is foolishness. What were you going, make it make sense. What were you going to do when you got up there if you did manage to get up there? Like, what were you, this is crazy. Like, what, you gonna fight God? Is that what the mindset was? Only for the Lord to really show me, like, yeah, that's the mindset that they had. That's what was in their hearts. And I was like, no, they can't be that stupid. And it's like, yeah, when people call you a Nimrod, this is what they get to, that stupid mindset. Like, what? Y'all thought y'all was going to, hold on, first and foremost, shout out to Pastor Omar Tebow for, telling me about the book of Jasher and just walking us through it, because it does go into such deep detail. So if you don't have the book of Jasher from the Apocrypha, you need to get that, right? Anywho, but the devil is stupid, y'all, because he cast you out once, right, to the earth. And then he cast you even lower to the ground as a serpent. What do you think is going to happen now that you have corrupted his people all over again? Like, y'all are, hold on, let me look at my notes, because this was wild. They was wilding. So these people, they was doing, so in Genesis, like I said, it doesn't really go into deep detail. It just says that they was going to do it. The Lord said, let's go down here and confuse their language before they actually make it up here. And, I just assumed he was like, and we're going to have to murk them. And it's over. You know what I mean? So he's like, let me go down here and confuse their language. But that's in Genesis. It gets so much deeper when you read it through. When you read it through Jasher, it's like, y'all, they foolishness, complete foolishness. Okay, I don't want to make this video too long because I have so much more to say. So I think I'm gonna break this one up into 2 parts, because when I tell you how these people, what they thought they was literally going to do and what actually really happened, God is amazing. That's all I can say. God is amazing, because the enemy is crafty, but the Lord is wise. And when I tell you this, just stick with me. I'm going to do a part 2. So we're going to take a break real quick, and then we're going to come back, and then I'm going to go into part 2, because yeah, this is crazy. Anywho, I see you back here, part 2. I'm going to actually record this all on the same day. So if you see me in the same shirt, see me with my hair still wrapped up, it's because I'm recording it the same day. Because yeah, I got to get it all out right now. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Peace.